Well, the NDC says that they are mourning democracy. We'll speak to our parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. That's all after this. Stay with us. All right, let's go to Parliament right away. My colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is joining us via Zoom for a conversation on day one, if you like, of Parliament, this last leg of it. Joseph, good morning to you. You were in black too yesterday, weren't you? Was there was there some kind of communication sent to all of you in Parliament to be mourning democracy, or this was just a minority business?
I wasn't in black, just for the record. Mama, you should go back to primary school and learn colors properly. I was in a blue-black attire. That's nothing close to black.
Okay. Yes, Honorable.
I was in a blue-black. So I wasn't mourning the death of democracy. I woke up yesterday morning. I had to step out of the house early. I didn't know the minority MPs had planned to wear black. I mentioned that on the AM show yesterday morning, but I got to know after I had left the house around 5 a.m. So please, for the record, I was wearing an attire similar to the color of yours.
No, don't mind my mischievous self, okay? But listen.
No, I know. You're not the only one who said it. So actually, this message is directed at other individuals than yourself.
Okay, don't say what you were wearing is close to what I'm wearing today, because there's a clear difference.
The value is the same. Blue, black are in the same neighborhood, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah.
So I got a call from Raphael Gabson, for example, yesterday, who is the NDC treasurer in the Bono East area. And he made a similar observation, and not just him and a few others. So they are the ones I'm talking to this morning. Okay,
so let's go back to how, was there like a grand entry to the chamber yesterday by the minority?
Not necessarily. So we all were expecting that sitting should have begun somewhere around 10 o'clock, which is the time that was advertised. Eventually, the House began sitting almost 1 p.m. And what we saw happening was the MPs coming in one after the other, wearing their black, particularly for those on the minority side. A lot of the majority MPs were in white. Even before sitting began, then they were, hanging around in the chamber in various groups, having conversations. And that's when we observed that a lot of them, particularly the minority MPs, were either in red and black attires, a batakari, which has both red and black stripes, or they are in, political suits that's mainly black top, black down. Some of them had red armbands on their hands. And just to, as you indicated, to mourn the death of democracy in the country. Eventually, in the course of the day, we had a conversation with some of the minority MPs led by Samuel Okujeto-Ablakwa, who addressed the media rights on the presence of Parliament. And then we asked the questions, and that's when he offered the explanation that the reason why we're seeing them in black is them wanting to mourn the death of democracy in the country. And additionally, the concern that they had about those who have died as a result of the election. There are about 5 people or so who had been shot. They felt that there was the need to show some respect to them and to mourn them, which is why they were actually in black. So that's what we saw unfold in the house.
So Joseph, we've got the sound bites of Okujeto-Ablakwa. I want us to listen to him. We'll come back and continue this.
Struggling to have it. They need him so they can get to the magic number 138. We have 138 already. Techiman South belongs to us. Senate West belongs to us. We have won convincingly. Check the presidential result, over 6,000. And we've put out the margin of victory for the parliamentary. More than 1,000 votes. More than 1,000 human beings. We have won a majority, and that majority will not be stolen. Enough of using weapons, misusing the military to overturn results. We will not accept.
The black you are wearing today, what exactly are you trying to put out with that?
We are mourning the death of democracy in our country, the discredited election, that the Electoral Commission has conducted, a confused Electoral Commission, a discredited Electoral Commission, clearly in cahoots with our opponents to rig the elections and to put out numbers that don't add up. That is what we are mourning. We are also mourning the use of violence in our election, the militarization of elections in this country. We are mourning the killing of 6 unarmed civilians who were only seeking to protect their votes. We are mourning the wanton abuse of state power to arm twist, force electoral officers to declare results in the favor of the ruling government. We are saying that we will not accept this despotic and tyrannic tendency, which is unknown in Ghana. I mean, Ghana has become such a beacon of democracy. Since 1992, we have been celebrated by many, many countries. And you have read all the Observer Mission reports. The European Union, the Commonwealth, ECOWAS, they have not minced words that this election has fallen short of the litmus test. It's not transparent. Collation has been a disaster. This is not free and fair elections. These elections has been conducted in fear. The collation has been done with brute force, seeking to overturn the verdict of the people. And we are saying that we stand in solidarity with our people, with the party. We are not going to accept these results, and we demand that justice prevails. That's why we are mourning the state of our democracy. We are mourning the end of credible elections in Ghana. We are mourning the use of brute force that has led to 6 unarmed civilians losing their lives. We are mourning the attempt to deny us of a majority in the 8th Parliament, which we have won fair and square. And we are sending clear notice that we will not accept this tyrannic and despotic conduct of the New Patriotic Party working in cahoot with Diajin Mensah appointed Electoral Commission. We will not accept it.
So Joseph, that's Okujoto Ablakwa, and you were engaging him, as he spoke to the media yesterday, explaining. So did this disrupt the process in Parliament at all? The fact that they were mourning the death of democracy?
No. So for them, it's more like the significance of it, the fact that they showed up in black. The processes went on. The speaker took his seat. Eventually, almost 1 p.m., he started with his opening address, urging MPs to be punctual, drawing their attention to the fact that there's a lot of business that needs to be done between now and when the House eventually takes its break, somewhere around the 22nd of December. And so his hope is that they'll show up as they ought to and be in the House in their numbers. Him congratulating those who have won elections this time around, going into the 8th Parliament, and wishing those who didn't win well. So the speaker said all of that, and then he gave the floor to the minority leader to also deliver his opening address. The minority leader focused on the issue with this particular just ended election, So he referenced the situation in Techiman. He said he had gone to see it himself. Some people were shot. They are looking for the pink sheet for that particular collation center that they still don't have. He felt that the EC had committed errors that that were not acceptable and which was endangering the nation's democracy. And in the course of that, he went on, and at a point in time there were more like interruptions from the majority side, seeking to draw his attention to the fact that what is expected of him is a welcome address as the House resumes sitting. So he shouldn't necessarily be focusing too much on all the other issues. And so he cut short his address and then gave the space to the majority leader, Sechi Mensah. And then he reacted to the minority leader's concerns. And he, for example, made an argument that the NDC has no business questioning the outcome of the elections as has been declared by the EC, because they don't even have the said pink sheets from all the areas. And it's now that they say they are doing an audit of those pink sheets. And, as he went on with that point, then the minority also started heckling him and asking him questions in the background, like, who told him that they don't have the pink sheet? Who told him that they don't have the pink sheet? So all of that happened, and then eventually the majority leader delivered the business statement, which was the outline of work for the week. And then they went on to other business, including dealing with the insurance bill. So the business of the House went on as expected, without any interruption of any sort, regardless of these concerns that the minority was actually raising.
So are they wearing black throughout the rest of the 7th Parliament?
I saw that clarification, and that's the indication that I was given, that this is an action that is continuing at least until what they're demanding for is given them, which is that John Mahama won the election itself, and he should be declared president-elect, not Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And additionally, as Mr. Kujato Ablakwa put it, they won 138 seats in Parliament, which gives them the majority without even the independent MP. And he mentioned the specific constituencies they are insisting they won, which is Techiman South, and he says the Senate West seat is going to them. So they say they will continue this protest, if you could call it so, until that victory is given them by the Electoral Commission.
Okay. Joseph, I know that you also engaged the majority leader. I want us to take a listen to him. We'll come back and, digest some of the things that he's had to say.
Even an odd number parliament, it cannot be a hung parliament. There will always be a majority.
But if there's an independent, and it's 137, 137.
The independent will associate with one side or the other of the House. There are only 2 caucuses, majority, minority. Independent, by the construct of our parliament, will be required to work with one side or the other of the party, of the caucus. So there can't be a hung parliament in Ghana.
Is democracy am joining your side of the House as the majority, the NPP side?
He will decide.
So far. Has the conversation with him happened yet?
He will decide.
But at least are you speaking to him, trying to
There's
get
an engagement by both sides.
No, my final question.
Don't need the
Maybe the negotiation is probably proving difficult already, is it? There are reports about some demands he's making on the party and all.
I don't know that. I don't know that.
And so in terms of working together, what can we expect at the level?
If you want to engage anybody, the person that you are seeking engagement with will have his or her own terms. Just that. So whoever is engaging, I believe you raise issues about terms of engagement. That's it.
So Joseph, you were lucky. You got him to speak directly to the issue, because the Daily Graphic had tried and he had said no comment to the specific issue of the former MP. What did you do differently?
So he was walking into his office in the tunnel, and of course, when I started the conversation, he said he wasn't interested in engagement. I followed him up and kept asking the questions, and even in the course of the conversation, as you realized, he was giving short yes and no answers, not willing to give out much, and indicating that he doesn't actually want to be led into temptation at any point in time. But yes, he ended up backing something else we had heard already just about a day or 2 after the election, that apparently not just the majority, the current majority, as in the NPP, but also the minority, as in the NDC side, has actually begun engaging or seeking to engage Andrew Amakwesi, so that then he joins even the NDC side of the House.
Joseph, let's backtrack a little bit. Tell us the role that Osei Mensah played in getting Mr. Esiama expelled from Parliament.
This was what happened. So Mr. Esiama said he wasn't contesting the Fomena seat. This was back in February this year, because he felt the executives in the constituency were not working fairly enough. There was an NPP primary in that particular constituency. Someone else was elected as candidate. Mr. Siama later came to say he's going independent. When he announced he was going independent, the Ashanti regional branch of the NPP wrote a letter to the Speaker of Parliament, drawing his attention to the fact that Mr. Amakwesi had actually been expelled from the NPP as a party because he had decided to go independent. In fact, a statement from the General Secretary, John Boedu, announced that all those who are going independent and their supporters were being expelled from the party, and Mr. Amakwesi was one of them. Mr. Mensah clarified in the course of the conversation that in terms of the request that had come from the NPP that Mr. Mokwesiama be expelled from Parliament because he's no longer a member of the NPP, which is actually what the Constitution says, that once you decide to leave the party that brought you to power, then your seat could be declared vacant. Mr. Osei-Kyei Mensah to clarify that this was actually a request that was coming from the Ashanti regional branch of the party. The request went directly to the Speaker. After like a month, if my memory serves me right, on the floor of the House, the Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, announced to MPs that this notification had come from the NPP, and he, read portions of the Constitution and indicated that he had come to a decision that Mr. Mokwesiama's seat is something that should be declared vacant and he should no longer hold on to it. So then that was done on the 6th of November, just before the House went on break. So, in fact, on the day that was done, after the announcement was made by the Speaker, there was an attempted intervention by the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, and those on the majority side to seek to comment on this. The Speaker said what he brought to the House was an announcement and that the issue was not up for debate. This was not a decision that the entire House was taking, but then it was just he, the Speaker, who was taking the decision. But, sometimes in this case, the argument can be made that it was the Speaker's decision and not necessarily maybe the majority side of the House or even the minority side of the House or MPs in general. But of course, the Speaker couldn't have taken a decision like this without consulting the leadership, particularly on the majority side, and in this case, Osei-Kyei Mensah.
Yeah, but Joseph, I remember this letter had been in Parliament for a while, and we had conversations on that. The majority didn't clearly state any position that was contrary to the content of this letter.
Exactly the case, exactly the case. So everyone is clear in their minds that the decision that was taken by the Speaker to declare the Formina seat vacant definitely had the backing of not just the national executives of the New Patriotic Party, which will obviously include the chairman, the general secretary and all, but then it also had the backing of the leadership on the side of the majority, including Osei-Kyei Mensah, who is the majority leader, the chief whip, and the other leaders on the majority side. So you could rightly make the point that the stone that the current majority in Parliament rejected a few months ago is actually what has become the cornerstone going into the next Parliament, because you're looking at a situation where that individual, Amakon Siama, will decide very largely who holds the majority side going into the next Parliament. Obviously, because he's been expelled from Parliament, we don't see him in the House these days. But, one thing that I should note is that I have had conversations with some MPs on the backbench who are legal practitioners and who are members of Parliament on the majority side. And to the extent that some of them were very firm in their mind, before the Speaker decided to declare the seat vacant, they were very firm in their mind that the Speaker had absolutely no basis to expel Mr. Siama from the House, and that they, to a certain extent, were backing Mr. Siama, except that, of course, because it's a party thing, then they, the backbenchers, would not have the authority and the audacity to step out there and kick against the decision or criticize the decision.
Yeah, true.
But to a very large extent, particularly the backbench, at least 3 or 4 MPs that I had spoken to who are lawyers felt there was no basis to expel Mr. Siama from the House, as had been requested by the NPP.
But that's also understandable, Joseph, because the president himself had visited. There was a debate, there were chiefs, there were many people, and he made it very clear that he couldn't work with anybody who had gone independent. And he said he had tried to have conversations with him. He sort of understood him, only to turn his back. So nobody was going to speak against what the president had said, at least not publicly. But it's also intriguing that the NDC, knowing that even though this man is no longer, per their own constitution, a member of the NPP, it's interesting that the NDC is talking to him. He can never be a member of the NDC, can he?
You see, you don't necessarily have to be a member of the party eventually, as far as Parliament is concerned. I'm sure that's why the NDC still has some form of hope that they could woo him into their fold to a certain extent. It's just about him deciding that he wants to sit with the NDC going into the next Parliament and not necessarily joining the party. But, the point is usually made that in politics, all we have are permanent interests and not exactly permanent friends. I'm just assuming, right now the NDC is insisting that they actually hold the presidency and even apart from parliament. So they are operating on that basis that they possibly have a chance of not only forming government, but also holding the majority in parliament. If that was the case, then they have some additional leverage to want to co-opt more people into their fold, both in parliament and probably in the executive arm if they end up having their way. I get the sense, even at their level, because you recall that the Formina MP has repeatedly said that he was winning the Formina seat going into the 8th parliament for the NPP. So almost everyone is clear in their minds that he will join whatever the NPP side of the house will be. But in politics, you can't tell. It's still worth the try, and it's still worth attempting to woo him into their fold as far as the NDC is concerned. You may never know.
Listen, it's interesting, witnessing what is playing out in Parliament these days, and we can't even wait for the 8th Parliament. So Parliament is back this morning. They sit at 10 a.m.
Parliament is back this morning from 10 a.m. They're trying to get a bill passed to govern the work of the insurance industry, drawing the lines, laying out punitive measures for those who abuse their authority as far as the insurance industry is concerned. It's called the Insurance Bill. Yesterday, there was the second reading of the bill when the House debated the principles of that bill. So we are expecting that they will continue work on it with the consideration stage and amending various portions of it. The House is also expected to deal with a number of other items, including the public-private partnership bill, which is a key thing that the House is expected to look at. We are still expecting that a document to be laid in the House recommending how much MPs should be paid as far as their Ace Gratia package is concerned, even as they exit the 7th Parliament. They will deal with that. All of that is expected to happen before the 22nd of December, and then they'll take a break for Christmas.
Okay.
And then sometime around the 2nd to the 5th of January, they'll resume sitting again. And that's when the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, will be expected to deliver his final State of the Nation address to this 7th Parliament before they will have their final sitting on the 6th of January. And then by midnight the 6th, we can assume that the 7th Parliament would have been dissolved automatically to make way for the 8th Parliament on the dawn of the 7th of January 2021.
Joseph, how many of the 273 members were in Parliament yesterday?
My count indicated a little over 100 of them, looking at both the majority and the minority side, were in the House yesterday. So we are expecting, and so the Speaker repeatedly made a point that he hopes that more MPs show up in the House to come help business, because these are very crucial days. But more importantly, just to highlight this very briefly, one of the reasons why a lot of MPs are being encouraged to show up in the House is that, the House is reviewing what is described as the standing orders that guide how business in the House is done. A lot of changes are being made. It will most likely be a very contentious issue, looking at the fact that we're entering an almost split Parliament, because a lot of amendments are expected to be made to that particular standing order. So, for example, currently the various committees of the House has about 25 members, which is split along the ratio of the representation of majority and minority. We are expected to see a change to that. Now we would have committees of the House having just about between 8 and 11 members, and there will be a chairperson and either 8 or 12 other members. So the number when it comes to the committees is being brought down substantially. And there's a requirement that an MP should be part of only one committee in Parliament. So, for example, there are MPs who are part of 2 or 3 committees. Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, the Ofoasia Yerebi MP, for example, who is a Minister of Information, is, for example, currently a member of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee. He's additionally a member of the Finance Committee. So, there's a lot for him to do, juggling along various committees. In the next Parliament, every single MP will be limited to a specific committee. I recall, I'm double checking that, but I recall that there was a proposition that when it comes to even the vetting of ministers should go to specific committees for the necessary vetting rather than an appointment committee of Parliament handling that.
Oh, that's...
yes, that was one of the propositions.
Okay.
I should be able to confirm that in the course of the day once we've double-checked the details of the new standing orders that the House is looking at, as to whether that would be the case going into the next one. But that was a key proposition, that we wouldn't have a whole appointment committee vetting all the 138 MPs. We would have all 128 ministers, as we had previously. We would have like the finance committee vetting the finance minister. We would have the security committee vetting the interior minister. We will double check whether that eventually found its way into the new standing orders. But that review is happening, and that new document will also be approved.
Yeah, but that notwithstanding, Joseph, it's still very significant changes that they seek to do. So we will continue this conversation tomorrow, gather a lot more in Parliament today. And still watch out for the former MP.
Well, maybe he'll come around to pack his books or, you know, take something he's left in his office, and then we'll grab him and bring a conversation.
Okay, great. Joseph Opoku Gakpo, our Honorable, what are you wearing to Parliament today, by the way?
I think I'll wear something light brown. Something, you know, light brown. That looks nothing like black. That looks nothing like any of the colors of the various political parties. So it doesn't become an issue when we talk tomorrow morning. I
think you should just wear blue.
That can, to a certain extent, be misconstrued to be blue-black, depending on what the MPs will be wearing themselves in the course of the day today.
All right, Joseph Opoku Gakpo, whatever you choose to wear, good luck with it. Joseph Opoku Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent.
Have a nice day as well, my lord.
All right, great. Helping us with how things pan out in Parliament yesterday. Very interesting.